Welcome to Jack's Corner, where conservative values meet national headlines, and truth and reality have a seat at the table. From Louisville, Kentucky, here's your host, Jack Richardson.
Well, welcome back to another edition of Jack's Corner, where truth and reality has a seat at the table. And as usual, I've got a lot to cover here, but it's going to be part tutorial, and then I'm going to talk about psychological epidemics and judicial corruption. Those are the topics, but I want to give a tutorial on what we have in America. What do we have in this country? And how do the tariffs play into this? I think we've kind of forgotten our history. We've forgotten who we are and how great this country is and what Trump is doing in the plan he has and how the tariffs all feed into it. But it's going to be a little bit of a long introduction, but I'm going to give you a lot of things and facts that I bet most of you don't know. So it's time to learn about some economics and history. You may find this shocking. In fact, it is shocking. Again, you have been misled by the usual suspects, the Democrats and the leftist media, but then also a corrupt judiciary. There's so many bad actors in this, but let's begin this topic with what is theologically and philosophically common sense. If you love your neighbor as yourself, and as you love yourself, it is impossible for it not to benefit you. Be greedy, selfish, manipulative, deceiving, lying, and selfishly and solely focused on self, then you will have killed the goose that laid the golden egg. That is America. We have been divided by those who benefit by the division. The left has historically never lived in love, only hate, violence, envy, and resentment. You see it played out every night on the news. They preach a false love, but foster division among the people because it benefits them. Now, for most of you who follow my podcast and my website, I give truth and reality a seat at the table, as I just said, because neither of those benefit the corrupt, the wicked, and the evil. I most often refer to that leftist cabal, better known as the Democrat Party. Now that sounds partisan, I know, but don't be so quick to dismiss it as such, because the facts prove otherwise. Upon examining their voting records and all their deviance that they support from normal policies, that party has been totally subsumed by evil. After all, the eye of the world knows the eye of the world. The wicked know the wicked. All they have to do is look at each other in the eye and wink, wink, nod, nod. And they commune with one another. Now, my real purpose for this introduction is to lead into one of the most important events occurring in our lifetime, and that is Trump's plan for the restoration of American greatness that will benefit us all and to rid us of those evildoers who profit off of having Americans divided and hating each other. With that, I want to get into what is occurring economically, globally, and nationally. Trump and his economic plan has the left and the socialists in a panic because it will put them all out of business. That leftist Democrat cabal can only exist in chaos, and Trump's plan is rectifying the corruption of decades. So with that, let me also get into the real meat of this article and allow me to build a foundation here so that you can first appreciate what we naturally have in this country and what Trump is going to restore. Now think about this, and I don't think too many people really realize this or know this. You may not have even been taught this in school. And this is just kind of gripping to me. It's so exciting to know this and understand this. But the North American continent, geographically and topographically, is considered the most fabulous and productive continent on the face of the earth. Why? It has the longest navigable waterways in the entire world. Those waterways go all the way into the interior of this continent and is passable. Its ocean ports are abundant and strategically placed. When you compare this continent, say, to Africa, for example, there is no contest. Africa, 3 times the size of the United States, is basically a plateau and only has 1 or 2 navigable waterways, as the escarpment from the interior drops so steeply on the way to the ocean that there is no way for ships to travel or any other type of commercial travel to exist. There is no access to the deep interior of Africa. The number of dams and locks would be prohibitive. Similar obstacles apply to so many other continents and countries. They simply do not have geographically that what the American continent has and what our country enjoys. Moreover, no other continent has the richness and natural resources that we have. We are the largest in coal and oil and natural gas and all other minerals that are necessary for us to thrive and survive as the most powerful nation in history. Furthermore, we are the breadbasket for the world due to our climate systems and the depth of our topsoil. All of these are important facts to know and understand because that explains why we are able to do what we have done. We are the richest and most powerful nation in the world and that the world has ever known or seen. But it's not just geography, it is also the people, our human capital. That means what's between our ears. It's our brains, it's our intelligence, it's our creativity, it's our inventiveness. And it's also the Judeo-Christian ethic that provided a foundation for a prosperous people and nation. I want you to think about this. In World War I, in World War II, and for the first time in history, you had a nation that was not only the world's number one producer, but also the number one consumer. Talk about invincibility. Well, there you have it. Nothing can compare or compete with that. As many have said before, America is uniquely positioned between two oceans and could never be taken down except from within. Unfortunately, and for decades, America's exceptionalism has been under attack from within by wicked and evil people who preach a pathological ideology. That's Marxism, communism, socialism, and choose to benefit themselves as opposed to the whole. They are truly spiritually and morally bankrupt and evil, and they have congregated in our universities, media, and a political party, the Democrat Party. And that is not an opinion. That is empirically proven. With the predicate I have just given, let's turn to the economy and the tariffs and all the things that the wicked love to attack us and attack Trump in his common sense plan to restore us. They realize that the plans Trump is implementing is the antidote to them. He is the cure and the protection against the malevolent forces attempting to tear this country down. Now, there was a time when anything made in America was considered the best, and we were the best. But too many people misinterpreted how we were able to provide for the world. We lifted the whole world up. In fact, we saved the rest of the world by allowing them to tax us through their tariffs. Yes, we allowed other countries to tariff us right after the world wars because the rest of the world was basically destroyed. Now, yes, that sounds unfair, but there was a plan for that. That was the plan right after the wars, so that we could lift them out of the disaster of the world wars. Europe was flattened and has always been at war with itself. So to keep the population from devolving into communism, the United States, in the most gracious and generous fashion ever known in world history, lifted Europe and the world up and allowed itself to be taxed through tariffs. You'll never find that has been done by any other country. Now we come forward to that period of time after the world wars and what was called free trade. And that has basically ended. And let me explain. That was and is an old, arcane, and outdated plan because all the countries we have helped have large, vibrant economies now. However, the time when the best was made in America has ended, unfortunately. Now, many factors played into that, including union leadership that was taken over by Marxist ideologues, and it was both labor and management who contributed to America's economic decline. And we are mismanaged by greedy people both in corporate America and in Washington. And I've lived long enough to know that from experience how the auto unions and the UAW destroyed the auto industry as their labor was overpriced and management was willing to basically pay them anything they wanted, and oblivious to the fact that soon thereafter, American products would no longer be the best and become the most expensive and unaffordable. And to add insult to injury, liberals, leftists, and leftists in the Democrat Party who were in control of our government at that time piled on regulations demanded by all the tree huggers and the environmental extremists. Therein started America's long decline. Even though the United States was the free world's protector with its military and nuclear might, it was never appreciated, and those abroad continued to rape us and our workers by blocking their markets from the sale of American goods. Now enters President Trump and what he called Liberation Day, where reciprocal tariffs were implemented. How could that not be eminently fair? Remember, fair, not free, fair. Well, the liberals and the leftists and the Democrats will tell you, well, it's not fair. But they can't explain why it's not fair for other countries to tariff and tax us, but not for us to tax them. How stupid is that? How can we as a nation, how can any of the voters out there allow them to get by with that? Well, this isn't working up here. And you can blame the media and a lot of your university professors for that you're paying them to basically indoctrinate your children. They can't explain why it is wrong for the United States to protect its workers. The Democrats always play upon emotions, falsehoods, and the absence of facts because the only way they can survive is through the lies, deception, and corruption in which they live. So while the left and the Democrats were content to sit back and let America bleed out financially and for American-made products and companies to be driven out of other markets, Trump has come in and changed the rules of the game. He is demanding that the world open its markets to the United States and by reindustrializing in America. Now, we've heard that the left say, oh, well, we can't do that. We can't build these plants that quick, and we can't do this that quick, and it's going to take years and all that. Well, we are going to bring jobs back home, but also make America great again insofar as what it produces and sells around the world. And we can do this quickly, and I'll explain in just a moment. However, it can't do that. We can't do that if all the countries are going to tariff our products as they do in Europe. But they do more than just tariff us. If the tariffs against us was not bad enough, what do? They add what's called a VAT tax. That's a value-added tax. And then they add regulations banning the importation of certain American products. What idiots ever allowed that? I think one of the most extreme examples of what the consequences of wrong people in government can result in is, let's take Detroit, for example. Now get this fact. It was one of the largest cities over 50 years ago when it had a population of 2.1 million. Today it has been hollowed out and hollowed down to around 700,000. And blocks of homes and buildings have been bulldozed. And it's as if nature is reclaiming the land as if in some kind of a sci-fi fiction movie. What a catastrophe. Not only because of the horrible policies, but because those who are responsible for that are no longer around to be held accountable. And accountable is something we need to be bringing back into this country for those who are so wrong and malevolent in the things that they propose and the things that they do in this country. Now, allow me this sidebar. As I was growing up in the 60s, no one could speak ill of that socialist President Roosevelt. He was worshipped as having saved the country. But folks, he didn't. He helped destroy it, and upon cooler reflection and historical review, it turns out that what Roosevelt did was deepen the Depression, making it last 10 years when it was already on its way to recovery 9 months after it began. Most people just don't understand this or know this. That's because you weren't taught that in history. Remember, get rid of history and you can do anything you want. If you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. This is where I believe the hottest places in hell need to be reserved for those who ascend to positions of power and abuse them. The facts are not difficult to know. In order to make the decisions that some of them made, they had to knowingly suppress the truth to do the things that they did. As I do in much of my writing and podcasts, I speak truth to power so that they know when Judgment Day comes for them, they won't have a defense or any excuse. They will know that the wrongs that they have done and that the wrongs that were done, as if they needed to be reminded. I also lived through the horrendous years of Jimmy Carter, who was a short, mean-spirited little man who ran on his hatred for Richard Nixon. Folks, you never do anything out of hatred. But this peanut farmer who endeared himself to the common man destroyed an economy and caused widespread suffering. He helped hollow out America even further. I'll never forget the 21% interest rates. Yeah, they got that high. And the double-digit unemployment and the double-digit inflation, all under Carter. Many people have forgotten that. And this is so sad. Some people can only do the right thing when they suffer enough. And as a consequence, that in that situation, that ushered in Ronald Reagan, who understood a lot of the things that I've just told you about America and with regard to this country and its greatness and incredible capacity to do things in months that takes other countries years and decades to do. Now, as I like to say often, I'm an equal opportunity critic, and it doesn't matter whether it's from the management side or the labor side, the Democrat side or the Republican side. If what you were doing is a detriment to the country and the people, you're no friend of mine and don't expect any kind words from me. This leads me to how our very important auto industry was destroyed, but not just by the unions, but also by the managers and management. We had managers who came from the financial side of the companies as opposed to the production side and were clueless as to how to make goods and products. They prostituted themselves to the Marxist labor union bosses. It wasn't the union members that were Marxist because they were basically too simple-minded to understand the ideological concepts that were at play. They just went along with the program thinking and trusting that those in leadership were doing the right thing by them, even though those very leaders were destroying the very country and the businesses that were putting food on their tables. As I began to suffer the consequences of poorly made American products, and particularly the automobiles, it was frustrating. I saw Japanese-made automobiles as a threat and hated it when I saw someone driving a foreign vehicle. Then one day, after a gathering of friends, one of whom was an heiress of a major vehicle manufacturer, as we walked out into the parking lot after a movie, I saw a Toyota vehicle and condemned the fact that somebody in America would have the nerve to own a foreign brand. And with that, she responded saying, "Well, Jack, why should we support American mediocrity?" Wow, that was a profound statement, loaded with truth. And that's what was happening to us at that time. It used to be that anything made in Japan was considered junk, but now the tables were turned, and anything made in America was turning to junk because of mismanagement of corporations and the greed of Marxist union bosses and a government that was being taken over by leftists and liberal tree huggers who saw America as endemically evil. Yeah, and you were paying for your children to be taught by evil professors teaching that kind of crap. Yes, we had become annoyingly suicidal. Stupid is the word better suited for it because the word stupidity contains in its definition a component of immorality. And yeah, we were becoming an immoral country. So as we have seen over the last 20 or 30 years, over 100,000 businesses and industries have left this country, and we have lost millions and millions of jobs. Moreover, how insane is it that we allowed ourselves to become reliant upon the enemy, and that enemy was China, to supply, think about this, we relied upon China to supply some of the basics for maintaining life in this country, such as pharmaceuticals and vital electronic parts for our communications and running our factories and businesses. Yep, that's what we did. And while Mr. and Mrs. Voter were too busy indulging in their comfort and conveniences, they voted for and fell for the lies of the left, thinking that the good old days would never end. Well, all of those on the left found a home in the Democrat Party, in the media, and now in the judiciary, and in our universities. They found it necessary to divide the people to create chaos. Immorality spread, as we have seen with men competing in women's sports. That's a leftist idea. Transgender transitioning of children. Drag queen shows for children. You know, interesting, they don't do it for adults. They just do it for the kids. It's always the kids. Get the kids first. Remember, Lenin said, "Give me a child until he's 5, and the seeds that I plant will never be uprooted." That's how devious these evil people are on the left. Opening our borders to criminals from around the world. Yeah, and you know the rest of the list. And anybody who opposed them and opposed the left were either called racist or Nazis. I've talked about that in a previous podcast with regards to the vocabulary of the Democrat Party. Truly, folks, how stupid can you be to fall for such juvenile name-calling? But we do, and we did. And Biden and his administration has done severe damage to our country. Trump is now trying to repair that damage. So let's dig into his tariffs plan a little bit deeper. Yes, it's going to cause some chaos in the markets, but so does the Fed chair. So do a lot of other things. The markets go through a correction, it seems like almost every month. It doesn't seem to bother you until the left tries to tell you that Trump is doing something evil and terrible. But the markets are not equal to the economy. So do not equate the irrational gyrations of the market with our economy. They're very different. A very small percentage of the American public are actively engaged in the market to really understand it. Most of the big traders in the market worship the dollar, worship money and the bottom line more than they do anything else, and are totally blind to the overall effects on the country and the people. So what Trump has done with his tariffs is to force all nations to open their markets, and the key word here is fairly, not free. Remember, there's a difference between free trade and fair trade, and too many on my side of the political fence don't understand that. Wise up, guys. What Trump is doing will benefit the entire country, but the media and the leftist Democrats haven't given him even 100 days to do it. Think about this. In fact, they were criticizing him on day 2 for not bringing down the price of eggs. Well, guess what? Not only are our interest rates falling, but so are eggs, gas, and other staples. But you don't hear that in the media because it doesn't benefit them. Now, China is a different issue altogether. All the rest of the nations are beginning to talk and walk in the direction that Trump desires on tariffs, and that will benefit every American. Trump has all but wiped out our trade deficit. Think about that. In just 100 days. That's amazing. But China is the Frankenstein that we all collectively created, thinking, as George Bush falsely thought, that he could democratize the world. But there was no foundation upon which democracy could be built in those other areas. And all we did was create in China a Frankenstein monster, which is even worse. China was given trillions and trillions of dollars to build and now have the largest navy in the world. Trump is isolating China and their threat. Folks, it's not all about tariffs. That's just only one part of the equation. It's not about the tariffs. It's so much more. China has wormed its way into South America, Central America, Europe, Africa, and elsewhere through their Belt Road Initiative, gaining influence and creating a debt veto power over those governments or those various governmental decisions in other countries that each of those countries have to make. And guess what? It's always to China's favor. It was never expected that Trump's policies would go without criticism and without a little discomfort. And one of the criticisms has been that we cannot re-industrialize this country that quick, like I just previously said. Let me remind everybody that the Pentagon was built in 3 years. And in World War II, we turned out one military tank every 4 hours. And a Liberty ship was built in 4 days. And Elon Musk just built a tremendous manufacturing plant in 3 months. So you have to stop listening to the people who are pathological liars and can never support the things that they say, nor are they ever held accountable for the fear that they spread. On top of it all, even before the tariffs were implemented, $16 trillion was already committed to come into this country. Folks, that's half of our gross domestic product. Then we have those people who like to spread fear about the strength of China. Well, don't believe it. They are a paper tiger. But where the danger comes in is Xi Jinping is of the Mao Zedong class, the greatest mass murderer of all history. Xi is a baseline communist, and when they get desperate, yes, they do desperate things. But as with Russia, we overestimated their military power, as we have seen in the Ukraine and after the fall of the Soviet Union. Likewise, with China, their population is collapsing because of their evil one-child program. They are in a population collapse, and that's a topic for a whole nother time. It's that Malthusian theory that we were going to overpopulate the earth, and now we're facing the danger of depopulation. And I hope one of the byproducts of that is going to be the outlawing of abortion, because we can't afford to lose any children. And the more we lose in population, the less and less children we're going to have. So that's another sci-fi movie, but it's actually happening in real time now in many countries around the world. So anyway, getting back to the point, it's China's evil one-child program is causing chaos, and it's coming back to bite them. And now they have a real estate bubble. You wouldn't believe the hundreds of thousands of real estate units that are just sitting empty, scores of skyscrapers that are totally empty. But that real estate bubble is worse than anything we've ever seen. The statistics are staggering, and they don't have the type of economy where there are any quick fixes. Moreover, they do not have a consuming class like we do, which is so important for economic health and stability of a country. Now, you've heard a lot of the criticisms from the left that Trump's tariffs rollouts are chaotic, even from some squeamish Republicans. But then I remind myself that anything normal is chaotic to a Democrat, as it does not serve their purpose. Republicans need to learn a lesson about teamwork. The team of experts that Trump has pulled together have studied this for years, and they know exactly what needs to be done to restore our country and its working class. Folks, stop thinking that you can drink all night long and not have a hangover the next day. That's not rocket science. You have spent yourself $37 trillion into the hole, and you voted for it. So what do you expect? It's time to give President Trump and his team a chance to restore the country. He's only been in the office for 100 days. Come on, give him a break. The formula and the prescription is something that should have been done and implemented 50 years ago. But the wicked Democrat Party wasn't going to allow that. And neither were cowardly Republicans. But now we have someone unique in the form of President Trump, who is in his second term and not running for re-election. So he doesn't have those obstacles in front of him and can do what is right for the country. And he is doing what is right. As you have heard Trump say, America holds all the cards, particularly in the tariff game, as we are the largest consuming nation in the world. But I will repeat again, don't you dare complain about the United States imposing tariffs on other nations when they are doing the same to us. Don't dare complain about tariffs until you start equally complaining and pointing the finger at all those other nations who are denying American jobs simply because they block our products and the things that we produce from being sold in their countries. Trump's tariff plan is really not so much about equal rates, but like I said before, fairness. And when you look again at the Europeans, they do not only tariff us, but they, like I said, they had the VAT taxes, and then they block many of our products via regulations from even being sold in their countries. That's not fair, and Trump is changing that. After all, what we have done for the free world it's now time for payback. For all of what we've done for the free world and for how we basically defend with our military and nuclear might the rest of the world. Let's think back once again on America's greatness. We are the inventors. We are the creators. We are the ones that take the initiative. Japan was and is only an imitator. China was and is a stealer because they steal all of our technology, and they couldn't invent anything if they had to. After all, they had most of their intellectual capacity in chains. There was no human capital there. Then now let me back up just a second and think about this. They've got all their human capital. Human capital is basically the intelligence of the people, the smartness, the inventiveness, the creativeness between the ears. But all of their creative capital is a threat to their, what I call, it's organized crime. Communism is nothing more than organized crime. And smart people and intelligent people, creative people, inventive thinking people are a threat to that type of government. But they've got them all in chains. So that's why they steal from us. Then you have to ask yourself this question. Name the top 5 technological breakthroughs that came from India. Folks, we are letting the world screw us and steal from us, and the Democrats are allowing it because they hate America. Shame on us. We are great because God has blessed us as such, and it's time to stop being so ungrateful to what's been given us. So in closing, let's take a deep breath, and that's closing for this particular topic. Let's take a deep breath. Thank God for your many blessings in this country, and make no apologies for the privileges that we have, and start being grateful for what has been given us. Trump's plan is working, and we are going to win this war with China because they do not have the strengths nor the type of economy that can survive the trade conflict. Don't let their bluster concern you. China is already experiencing an economic downturn. And as I said previously, they are staring a financial collapse in the face, and particularly in the real estate market, like none that has ever been seen elsewhere in the world. Now, I want to move on to another topic, and this is very current and important, and I call it, and I've written about it, it's called judicial tyranny. And I'm also going to talk about what's actually happening in that regard in Kentucky. And so I want all my Kentucky viewers to listen up. Start out with, in a Breitbart News report, a second leftist Democrat judge has been caught harboring illegals for helping them evade the law. The FBI just arrested a left-wing Wisconsin judge for allegedly helping an illegal immigrant escape arrest, and according to a Wisconsin newspaper and as reported on Fox News. Now, let's acknowledge a reality here. A liberal Wisconsin judge is not only redundant, but expected in Wisconsin. And that's a shame. It used to be a solidly Republican state, but now they've just gone overboard. In truth, liberalism and justice don't go together. For liberals, justice is what they say it is. There is no rule of law for them, even though they talk about it all the time, because the rule of law is not Machiavellian enough for them. Machiavellian means that the means are justified by the end, and they can't follow the rules. Liberals and leftists have a warped view of reality, and they are mentally incapable of syllogistic thinking. They cannot psychologically adapt to reality or process facts in a normal way. So what they'll do is that they will bend them in a way necessary to fit their biased version of what it should be, or the utopian that they dream of. Now, folks, after 4 decades as a lawyer, I know what massive reforms are needed in our judicial system, including our jury system. The first thing I disabuse my clients of when they come into my office is the notion that there is such a thing as justice. Yep, you've got to manage your clients' expectations, and most of them believe in the idea of justice. There was a time when there was more of it, but not in this world where we've allowed the left and the pandemic of the left and the psychosis of the left into all of the major institutions like our Democratic Party and the media and our universities and so forth. But nevertheless, however, you can't expect justice out of an unjust person. That is, one who makes up their own rules and owns a pathological ideology such as socialism and big government and the deep state. To cap it off, they are their own God. Remember, 2/3 of the Democrat Party are atheists. Oh, and they will say, well, but I believe. But ask them, well, which God? Which God do you believe in? It's the one that they made up. Or ask them the last time they went to church, or the last time they read the Bible, and you will get a blank stare, or maybe a stream of cursing and name-calling as we see going on currently right now. The Democrats think that they can become real macho by doing a lot of cursing. They're always trying to morph to try to manipulate you, not tell the truth. Their moral code is homegrown, not from a transcendent source. Let's be blunt here. Leftists and Democrats are bad people, as only bad people could condone the lies that they tell and support the perverse and deviant policies that they propose. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of leftist judges out there who need to be arrested, and some are, we're beginning to see, are, and they need to be placed on trial. and it is impossible for them to be unbiased or render justice because their worldview prohibits it. They are at war with God and reality. No good fruit can come from a bad tree, and they are a bad tree. Now, there are some good judges, and I have been friends with many of them, and they have a strong moral base and a core that guide them. But they are in the minority. Now, just recently here, and this is a heads up for Kentuckians, just recently here in Kentucky, the teachers union, the leftist governor, he's a Nancy Pelosi type leftist, and other liberal groups spent $1 million to get a liberal leftist Democrat judge elected to the Kentucky Supreme Court. Heads up, think about this. Upon taking her seat, the first thing she did was one of the rarest things in law, and that was to reconsider a case that was decided just 3 months earlier by the court when she was not sitting there on the bench. I'll repeat this again. A reconsideration of a court's decision is rare. It's like 1% or less. Now, here's the last nail in that coffin. The 3 judges who sat on the case and heard the evidence said that the rehearing of the case was inappropriate since the issues had already been presented to the court. So what made the difference? The $1 million new judge. That one judge who replaced another more conservative one. And what was the issue at hand? The reversal of a decision on a case which the teachers and the teachers union and the leftist governor wanted reversed. You see, there is no justice anymore. It is all politics. Folks, did you really think that the new judge, Pamela Goodwin, was given $1 million because she was that outstanding of a judge? Clearly something was expected of her for that kind of money. Good grief. If you are going to be that corrupt and partisan, wouldn't you think that you could hide it better than that? She couldn't wait. She was tripping over her feet to do what they wanted her to do. Leftists don't care. They are going to run roughshod over you if you don't stand up to them and back them down. Judge Goodwin must recuse herself, as this was and is an embarrassing payoff and corrupt as hell. Shame, shame, shame. It brings the system of justice, particularly the Kentucky Supreme Court, into disrepute. The very appearance of impropriety and the payoff could not be more glaring. Kentucky voters, you need to get on the phone now and raise 10 kinds of hell with your legislators and senators, because there are things that they can do. This story can't be buried. The nexus between the donors, the judge, and the granting of their desired rehearing has a powerful stench. Again, the appearance brings the whole of the justice system into question. Friends, you must stop thinking that just because someone wears a black robe, they are somehow just and smart and an expert. Unfortunately, they're not. Way too many are mostly political activists paying off donors and having a clue about the duties of a judge and what justice is. In Kentucky, the voters had a chance to change things for the better, but were too inept to understand that the constitutional amendments before them a couple of years ago were for their benefit and to correct the errors of the past that could only be accomplished by amending the Constitution. Corruption was institutionalized in Kentucky over 100 years ago, and yes, by what was then total Democrat control of the state. So now we have to do it the hard way. And what is that? Educate. It's long and it's a slow process to wake people up because they live in their addiction to convenience and comfort. We must form a committee for judicial reform to oust the leftist radicals on the bench. And this is not because they are leftists or liberals, but because that mindset is not capable of delivering opinions fairly, justly, and by the written letter of the law. Furthermore, a citizens committee must impose upon the legislature the one thing it can do: control the funding of the courts. Starve them out if necessary, because society collapses if justice cannot be counted on from the judicial system. So in closing, the purpose of contracts between people is to bring stability to relationships. That is law school contracts 101. In fact, that applies to any relationship. If people cannot rely upon their agreements, on their contractual relationships with one another, then the system collapses. Likewise, the people have a contract and a social contract with those entrusted to govern. Folks, the judicial system is broken as we have placed those lacking any judicious nature and we put them in power. The people can no longer count on fair and just results based upon the interpretation of the law emanating from the courts. What the courts are doing is making law. There is no longer any reliability and predictability, which the courts of law are supposed to protect. It's time for action, time for organization, time for exposure and educating the public about who the people are who are wearing the black robes and who paid them to get in that elected position. And I will say this again, it is time to outlaw the wearing of black robes. It's a judicial hijab. It falsely implies something superhuman and super just. But if that's the case, how can that be with so many courts of appeal and reversals? Just think about that. Think about that for a moment. If they were so knowledgeable, if they were so damn knowledgeable, why are so many decisions being appealed and reversed? It's incompetence and or corruption, or maybe both. Time to start looking at and treating judges as flawed humans, just like the rest of us are, and very susceptible to mistakes. We see that every day coming down from the courts of appeal. Furthermore, the robe does a disservice to the one wearing it, as it is too tempting to see oneself as something more than they are. They begin to believe they live on Mount Olympus. It destroys humility and the realization that they too are under and not above the law, and moreover, do not make the law. Don't forget, tyranny will start with the courts, so don't delay. Start acting and organizing now. So I know we've gone long today, folks, but there were some important facts that you needed to hear, and hopefully it was educational and beneficial to you. That's it for today. This is Jack's Corner, and I'm Jack Richardson.